I remember a night last spring when you told the story of how cheetah development came to be, because it wasn't part of your plan.
Yes, I was being persuaded to visit Africa by my good friend and pastor. He wanted me to see what our church was doing in Africa. And I really had no interest in it at all. I didn't believe in the idea of a mission trip. I said that I would go if my wife would go.
Was your wife interested in Africa?
Not at all.
So you thought that was a pretty safe bet?
Yeah, I was sure she would never come. And so I went home and told her that we were being asked to go to Africa, and she said, "Oh, I don't want to go." I said, "That's good, that's okay." But we do have a social obligation. We need to go to an organizational meeting, hear about it, and then we can say no and it'll be done. I heard about it, and at the end of the meeting there was like a straw poll of what do people think? Do they want to come, not come, or can't decide? And we were like, no, we're not going. There were a number of women at that meeting that we didn't really know. We had seen in our church, it's a big church, but said, well, but come to the next meeting because we want to be friends. So we went out in the parking lot, and I said to her, Lonnie, are you kidding?
So she agreed?
She agreed,
She agreed
yes.
to go, okay.
So we ended up going back to these meetings and never agreed to go, but we found ourselves stepping off a plane in Africa. We found ourselves in Dar es Salaam. This is July.
Dar es Salaam is?
In Tanzania, a city of more than 5 million people.
Okay, so you're there with your church group, church
Yes.
mission group.
And we went into central Tanzania and saw a church and saw people and did the things that you do on these kinds of trips. And what I saw in Africa everywhere was business opportunities and desperate poverty. And nobody connecting the two of them, ever. There was no functioning solutions.
You had a meeting with the bishop of your denomination.
Yes, and again, a social obligation. And we called ahead and found out when the bishop was going to be there, and intentionally went when he wasn't.
But
he was there.
But he was there.
Right, and so he brought us all into his office. There were 10 of us. He took a lot of time with us. He told us basically the story of the history of East Africa and Tanzania, and how Christianity came there, and what the Germans and the British people did, and how the Lutheran Church got there. Eventually came around to us, and with each person got them to talk about their experience of being in Africa. And finally came around the room to me. And so I said, as for me, I have no questions, no thoughts. I have some business ideas knocking around in my head here, but I think it's really time for us to go. And he took off his glasses and threw them down on the desk. And he did this weird thing with his fingers like this. And he said, you don't have business ideas. You have a vision from Christ. And it's going to happen. And it's going to be the hardest thing you ever did in your life. But God is going to be faithful to you. Don't worry. Just keep going. So I went out of that meeting, and a number of women came up to me, and they asked me, so you have a vision from Christ that's amazing, what is it?
Yeah, and you said?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. And my pastor friend, Lloyd, came to me because I didn't want to go on this trip and said, so Ray, what would it take for you to believe that God has called you to Africa? And in his mind, he's just talking about this trip. But that's not what I heard. I heard, the deep FM voice, God has called you to Africa. And I thought, this is crazy.
But you gave him an answer.
I did. I thought, this is so crazy. What's an impossible thing? And it popped right into my head. I said, if I see 2 cheetahs eating a fresh kill, then I'll know God has called me to Africa. The documentary I had seen before we came on the trip said it was the first time it had ever been filmed in history. You don't see cheetahs eating a fresh kill, they hide. I thought it would never happen. It was an impossibility. You
continued at your walk, you continued your trip, and just before the trip ended,
we went on a safari, and it was beautiful. You travel around in a very large place, and the guides share on the radio where they're seeing things. So they can find animals that you haven't seen yet and bring you to them. And we're on our way back to our cabana for the night. And they get a call on the radio. And this Maasai guide stands up at the front of our vehicle. And he's so excited. He's going, "We are going fast. We are going fast. Hold on tight. Elephant picture, no picture. Giraffe picture, no picture. Fast." They drove like maniacs. We went maybe 45 minutes away from where we were. We drove through rivers. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to leave the road because they're excited too.
The guide was excited.
Yes.
So this was something the guide doesn't see.
Really special. Of course, it's two cheetahs eating a fresh kill.
And what went through your mind when you saw
As-
two cheetahs eating a fresh kill?
Well, my pastor was sitting right in front of me here, and he turns around and he goes, "But what went through my mind is, what does it mean? You know, so God showed me two cheetahs eating a fresh kill. What am I supposed to do? What happens next?" So I just was trying to make sense of it, and we came home from Africa. I never told my wife even. And we got home from Africa, and a couple of weeks later it was my birthday, and I opened it up, and it was an audio language program for Swahili.
For Swahili.
For Swahili, and I said to my wife, "What is this?" And she started crying, and she said, I don't even understand this myself, but God's shown me that you're going to Africa."
And you hadn't talked to her about going to Africa?
No, not at all.
At all?
At all. Nothing.
And you hadn't even really decided in your mind that's what was going to happen? at this
No,
point.
I couldn't. I was still trying to make sense of what does it mean to see two cheetahs? Does this mean I help some other organization? Maybe I find an entrepreneur and work with them there once a year. Maybe I take a trip once a year. What does it mean? I don't even know what it means. I started writing business plans as if I would go there and do some business, because that was what I had been thinking about. But I didn't believe any of the business plans. But I became more and more internally convicted that I needed to go back.
So your next step was the writing of the business plan, getting a ticket?
I stopped writing the business plans. I contacted people I knew and said, "I'm going to start a nonprofit that works in Africa, that starts businesses." And then I got a ticket and went.
You went.
Yeah.
And how long were you there that time?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
So I stepped off a plane again in Dar es Salaam. I didn't know anybody. A person that I had been connected to met me at the airport, dropped me in a hotel that night, and the next morning I got up and walked out on the street.
And you didn't know what you were going to do?
I didn't know what I was going to do. I put out my foot and I started walking around. I started praying for God to open doors, and that became my prayer for several years now.